Hi guys. I think it's working. Yes, it's working. Okay. Listen, if I'm not staring right at the camera, it's because I'm reading my notes, not because I'm trying to ignore you. Okay. So, recently I saw an ad for the new Star Wars movie that was coming out. Apparently it's going to be the last one, or so they tell us. I'm not entirely sure I believe that. They keep coming out with new ones. I was around when the first Star Wars was brought out in 1977. I was all of 7 years old and we got to go. I don't remember a heck of a lot about it because when I was 7 I used to have similar to an epileptic fit, and so my brain got a bit scrambled from those times. What I do remember is Luke blowing up the Death Star, because why wouldn't you remember that, right? So that first episode was called A New Hope, and that is what I'm nattering to you about today, hope. Nice segue or not? No, perhaps not. In Star Wars, hope was centered around Luke. Personally, don't know why it was centered around Luke. Luke, to me, is the most wishy-washy of characters. If I was in trouble, I'd rather have Han and Chewbacca come save me, not Luke. But anyway, to a Christian, so hope in Star Wars is based around the Jedi. In Christianity, hope is centered around God and his promises to us. God is not a man who lies. If he makes a promise, he keeps it. Abraham was given a promise of children from his own body. He was given that promise when he was over 100 and his wife was in her 80s, and they hadn't had any kids at that point. So when God said, you are going to have a heritage of people from your own body, and I'm going to make you a father of nations, most of us will go, are you completely bonkers or what? Abraham didn't do that. Abraham hoped on in faith, despite the fact that his body was, as the Bible described it, decrepit. He hoped not in his body, he hoped not in some miracle, he hoped in God, and he hoped in the promises that God had given him, and he knew God's character enough to know that if God had said he would do that, he would do that. And so that's where hope resides. But what is hope? It depends on whether you're talking worldly hope or biblical hope. Worldly hope sometimes would be better called wishful thinking. As in, I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow because I want to go tramping or whatever. It's a desire, but it has no faith behind it. Worldly hope could also be described as positive thinking or optimism, hoping that good things will happen despite what's going on at the moment. Now, neither of those attitudes is a bad thing in themselves. It's good and useful to think positively and to look for the good in anything that happens. Those are good things. In fact, the Bible would support those things. Not that you get your new age gurus to admit that those kind of concepts came from the Bible. As good as those attitudes are, though, they are not hope, and they don't demonstrate biblical hope. I could reinvent the wheel, but seeing as the Bible Project have already done quite a really good video on explaining the Hebrew and the Greek understanding of the word hope, I'm going to add a tag to that video and you guys can watch it. It's really good. It's worthwhile watching if you really want to understand what the Bible means when it uses the word hope. So I'm going to leave that to them to do the nitty-gritty, pick it apart and tell you what all the Hebrew words are and all that. So you can click onto that if you want to watch and if you want to understand a bit more after you've finished watching this. I will give you, however, my personal testimony. Hebrews 19 tells us that hope is an anchor to our souls. Your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. So imagine that your soul is a ship on the sea, and when everything is good and the weather's good, it just floats along and it's quite happy. However, when there's a major storm, you need to weigh the anchor, or you need to drop the anchor so that you hold steady in place and don't get blown all over the show and get lost. That's the point of dropping an anchor in the middle of a storm, and so that is what hope is. It drops an anchor in the middle of a storm and it allows us to stand steady in our place when everything around us is falling apart. Now, I grew up here in Greymouth, and I went through a stage from the age of 16 to 24 where I lost hope. I was severely depressed. I was suicidally depressed. And the Bible says that without hope, or without a vision, because hope is sometimes a vision, without a vision people perish. So if you don't have hope, if you don't have something to look forward to, often in times of trouble, there's no point in carrying on. And that's what happened to my younger brother, who committed suicide when he was 20. So hope was always a bit lacking for me until I found Jesus, until I found God. And then my hope got centered not so much in circumstances being wonderful or everything being perfect, but actually hope then got centered in God himself, in his character, in his promises. And one of the things that he promises is that he will never leave us nor forsake us, no matter what we do, no matter where we are. And that has been an anchor that has held me now for many, many years. And even in the tough times and things have been difficult, that anchor has continued to hold me through and keep me solid and stable. So my hope is not based in circumstances improving or in everything turning out exactly as I would like. My hope is centered in God's continued presence in my life. His promise that he will never leave me nor forsake me, that I can run to him and he will hide me under the shadow of his wings. He is my rock, he is my fortress, he is my hope and the anchor of my soul. I hope you have hope. I hope you have hope. But if you do not, then look to God to be your hope. His promises are true, and he promises to always be with you no matter what. So, take heart, gather your hope, and have a great week. Kia kaha.